Welcome to today's tutorial that I wanted to make up for y'all on factoring trinomials. So far we've talked about just factoring binomials and a little bit more simple factoring, and I know that factoring trinomials is a bit more of a challenge. There's a lot more steps to it, so I wanted to jump on here and do a tutorial for factoring trinomials. So the first video that I'm going to be posting on this video right now is factoring trinomials where our a in this ax squared plus bx plus c, where the a is equal to 1, okay? Because when we factor the trinomials where a is equal to 1, it's going to be a much simpler step of factoring. So essentially we're going to be factoring this x squared plus bx plus c, okay? And what we want to do is we want to find two numbers that we can multiply together to equal c. So two numbers multiplied to equal c, and the same two numbers, so the same two numbers add up to equal our b constant, okay? So there's a couple of initial rules that we just want to write down and know to help us as we are going through this step. Number one is going to be if B and C are both positive, then our numbers are going to be positive. So the two numbers that are the factors are going to be positive, okay? If B is negative and C is positive, our two integers, our two numbers will be negative, okay? And for 3, if B is positive and C is negative, then our two numbers, 1 will be positive and 1 will be negative, okay? But when we combine them together, we need to have a negative, or we need to have a positive B, okay? So let's go ahead and get into actually putting this into application where it'll make a little bit more sense. So let's take a look at the equation n squared plus 9n plus 20. So the first step we want to do is we want to take the factors of this value here, okay? Because this is going to be a, b, and c. So c is equal to 20. So we want to factor our 20 and find out what times what equals 20 and adds up to be this 9, okay? So when we write down the factors of our 20, our factors of our 20 is 1 times 20 gives us 20. 2 times 10 gives us 20. And then we have 4 times 5 gives us 20. If we look, 4 plus 5 is going to add up to be 9. So I'm going to draw two bubbles, and I'm going to put in each of the first bubbles, okay? So when I'm factoring, because we have n times n, that gives us our n squared. So then we see that both are positive, so we're going to have positive and positive. And I know that 4 times 5 equals this 20, and it adds up to be 9, okay? So that is the way we go about factoring this first trinomial. Let's go ahead and look at another example problem, okay? Let's say I have t squared minus 11t plus 30 3. Ooh, sorry, this should be a 14. I wrote down the wrong number. Okay, sorry, I apologize. So that is going to be a 14t, negative 14t. Okay, so I have t squared minus 14t plus 33. The first thing I want to take note of is that we have the negative sign in front of our b value. So when I write my bubbles, I'm going to write my two little bubbles to get it started, right? So when we're factoring, we have our two bubbles. We have our t and we have our t. We can automatically put them in there because we know t times t gives us this t squared value that we need. Because this is a negative, we know that both numbers have to be negative. Because a negative times a negative gives us a positive, but when we combine two negatives, summing them, it gives us a negative, okay? So now that I have my t in place and my negative in place, I now need to factor my 33 to figure out what times what gives me 33. And I know that 3 times 11 gives me 33. And a 3 plus 3 is 14. We already have our negatives in place, so I can put a 3 and 11. So when I combine them, we end up with t squared. If I factored this, if I multiplied this back out, it would be t squared minus 14t, because a negative 3 minus an 11 gives me a negative 14, and a negative 3 times a negative 11 gives me a positive 33. As we keep moving forward, let's go ahead and take a look at one more equation before we take another step into a little bit further, more complicated factoring of trinomials. So we have k squared minus 11k minus 12, okay? The first thing I notice is that we have a negative 12 and we have a negative b value. So I'm going to throw this into our little bubbles. So we have a k and we have a k. We know in order to have a c value that is negative, we have to have a positive factor and a negative factor, because a positive times a negative gives us a negative. So now we need to figure out what our factors of 12 are and how we're going to put them to come up with this sum of a negative 11. So if I come over here and factor 12, I can have a 3 times 4. Another factor set of 12 could be 1 times 12, and another factor could be 2 times 6. If I add together a 3 and a 4, if one is negative and one is positive, it is not going to equal 11. Okay? If I had a negative 6 times 2 gives me a negative 12, which I need to match this negative over here. But if I add together a negative 6 plus 2, that is not going to equal my negative 12. If I have a negative 12 times a positive 1, it will give me the negative 12 I need, and negative 12 plus 1 gives me a negative 11. So my factors are going to be our positive 1 and a negative 12. That will be the factor of this trinomial. Okay? So as we continue going through and factoring, what happens if we do not have a 1 in front of the polynomial? So let's say we have the case where we have 2z squared minus 16z, let's say we have 16z cubed. Let's go ahead and do it this way, 16z cubed. So let's say we don't have it in the form of ax squared plus bx plus c, okay? So we have 2z cubed minus 16z squared minus 18z. So this is going to take a few more steps for us to figure out. The first thing we want to look and see is, can we factor anything out to get this into that trinomial that we're looking for? And in fact, we can. We have a 2z cubed. 2 divides evenly into 16 and 18. And a z can go into, we have a z over here, right? So I can divide everything by z. So what I'm going to first do is pull out a 2z. So 2z cubed divided by 2z is going to leave me with a z squared. Negative 16z squared divided by 2z is going to give me a negative 8z. 18z divided by 2z is going to leave me with this negative 9. I now have this in the form of ax squared plus bx plus c. So I can keep this 2z, bring it down, and I can do my bubbles. And now I need to look to see. I'm going to put a z and a z. Both of these are negative signs, which means I'm going to have one positive and one negative. So I need to think, what times what equals a negative 9, but adds together to give me a negative 8. So we know our factors of negative 9 are going to be a negative 3 times 3. Well, those won't sum together to give us a negative 8. So if I have a negative 9, if I do negative 9 times a positive 1, that will multiply together and give me a negative 9. But a negative 9 plus 1 will give me my negative 8. So my factors are going to be a negative 9 and a positive 1. Okay? Hopefully this helps get you started as far as factoring the trinomials go. I'm going to record another video here in a moment that I will post at the same time as this one that will go over the next step of factoring trinomials. And I'm also going to scan and put in one of my handwritten rule notes to go along to help you out. As with always, if you have questions, please email me or pop onto our office hours. I look forward to helping you. Have a great day.